My name is Jenny Williams, and I knew something was wrong the moment my father froze at the airport. A man in a navy suit handed him a thick envelope, my name printed across the front. Derek, my brother, went pale, pretending he didn't see it. 4 days earlier, they'd laughed when I walked out of my mother Adi's dining room after Derek told me, "You're not part of this family. Don't show up." I didn't fight. I didn't beg. I just left. And now the world they tried to control was cracking open, exactly the way they cracked mine. My father froze at the airport when a man in a navy suit handed him a thick envelope with my name printed across it. Derek, my brother, stood beside him, pale, pretending it wasn't happening. 4 days earlier, they'd laughed while I walked out of my mother's dining room after my brother said, "You're not part of the family. Don't show up." I didn't shout. I just left. And now here we were, their world unraveling exactly the way they designed mine to. Before I tell you what really happened that night, hit like and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Have you ever drawn a line with family and refused to erase it? I remember that Sunday like it was supposed to mean something. My mother called it family dinner the way she always did, as if the word alone could fix the cracks. I spent half the afternoon in my apartment kitchen layering lasagna, brushing garlic butter over bread, choosing a bottle of Merlot I couldn't really afford. It wasn't about the food. It was my peace offering. My proof that I still cared enough to show up. Their house smelled like cinnamon candles and old photographs too sweet, too staged. The laughter I heard from the doorway died the second I walked in. My father looked up from his phone, nodded once. My mother smiled the way she smiled at polite neighbors. Derek. My brother had his arm thrown over the back of his chair, bragging about his new business deal, the one I'd quietly kept afloat 3 times already. I set my dishes down, the steam fogging the plastic table runner, and waited for someone to make room. No one did. Dinner unfolded like it always did, chaotic, loud a performance with no audience for me. They talked about the upcoming family reunion in spring, tossing dates and hotel names around as if I wasn't sitting right there. I listened, nodding, where I was supposed to, heart pounding harder than it should have. I didn't want an invitation. I just wanted acknowledgement. When the conversation paused, I smiled and said as evenly as I could, "Just tell me when the reunion is. I'll book early this time." The words hung in the air for a second too long, then fell flat. My mother's fork scraped her plate. Derek didn't look up. My father cleared his throat and asked if anyone wanted more bread. I should have been used to it by then, the way they erased me in plain sight. But something about that moment made the air feel thinner, sharper. Maybe it was the effort behind my calm voice, or the way my mother refused to meet my eyes. Maybe I was finally old enough to recognize cruelty when it wore manners. I poured myself a small glass of wine and sat back, watching the scene play out like I wasn't in it. The golden child in his audience, the mother keeping peace through silence, the father measuring control in tone. I told myself to breathe, to not ruin another Sunday, but a part of me already knew peace that depends on silence isn't peace. It's training for surrender. That was the last Sunday I tried to earn my place at their table. The pause after my question felt endless, and then Derek finally looked up. He leaned back in his chair, that smug half grin he always used when he wanted to land a punch without moving his hands. "You're not part of the family," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't show up." No one gasped. No one told him to stop. The room didn't explode. It caved in. My mother pressed her napkin to her lips, trying not to smile. My father slapped the table once, laughing like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all week. The noise filled the room sharp and tinny, bouncing off the walls. The table erupted in laughter. I remember thinking how strange it was that a sound could hurt more than words. I stared at the lasagna I'd made, steam still rising, the cheese bubbling like it belonged to someone else. I could feel heat crawl up my neck, not from anger, but from the shame of realizing how easily they'd rehearsed this scene without me knowing. I didn't say a word. I set down my glass, folded my napkin, and pushed the chair back slowly enough to make them uncomfortable. Derek smirked. "Oh, come on, Jenny. Can't you take a joke?" I met his eyes for the first time that night. "You meant it?" I said softly. He didn't deny it. None of them did. I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair. My mother's voice trailed after me. Thin, polite, useless. "Jenny, stay. It's just dinner." "No," I said, sliding my arms into my sleeves. "It's a message." I got it. The air outside was freezing, the kind that stings your eyes. Behind me, the laughter started again, muffled through the door, as if they couldn't bear even a minute of quiet. I stood on the porch. For a long second, breathing in cold air until my chest stopped shaking. Then I walked to my car, lasagna untouched, still steaming in my hands. There's a kind of silence that doesn't beg for explanation. It announces its own ending. I didn't slam the door or cry on the way home. I just drove through the dark suburbs, headlights slicing through fog, thinking one clear thought that repeated like a heartbeat. This is the last time I tried to belong somewhere that laughs when I bleed. The next morning, I woke to sunlight cutting through my blinds, the kind that makes dust look like snow. My phone lay face down on the counter. No calls, no messages, no apology. The silence was louder than anything they could have said. I made coffee, sat by the window, and tried to convince myself that peace felt like this. Empty but calm. But peace isn't quiet when it's built on avoidance. It's just waiting for the next wound. By the second day, the calm turned brittle. I checked my phone once, then twice. Nothing. They hadn't even noticed I was gone. Or maybe they had, and that was the point. On the third night, I left my phone in another room and told myself I was done caring. On the fourth day, my phone finally buzzed. I stared at the screen for a long second before opening the message. "Derek, hey. Weird question. Did your bank block the transfer?" The loan payment didn't go through. No greeting, no sorry, no mention of the dinner. Just business straight to the wallet. I read it twice. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, then typed 4 words that felt like they'd been waiting years to exist. Me, not family, not funded. Then I blocked his number. I thought my hands would shake, but they didn't. Instead, a strange calm spread through me, the kind that comes right before a storm. Except this time, the storm wasn't mine to weather. An hour later, another text appeared, this time from my father. I didn't open it. I just flipped the phone over and let it buzz against the table until it stopped. The only sound left was the low hum of the refrigerator, steady and uncaring. That night, I sat on the floor surrounded by old bank statements, receipts, transfer records, years of emergencies that always had Derek's name attached. The amounts blurred together. 200 here, 500 there, 1,000. When his business almost failed, my stomach turned. The pattern was clear. My generosity had become their safety net and their weapon. I pulled a yellow highlighter across each transaction, watching the paper glow under the lamp. Every mark was a bruised proof of how long I'd been funding their comfort at the expense of my sanity. When I was done, I stacked the papers neatly and whispered to no one. That's over now. Outside, rain started to fall against the glass. For once, it didn't sound lonely. The next day, my phone stayed quiet. No calls, no laughter, no Derek. But I knew how this worked. People who feed on you panic when you stop bleeding. By evening, I heard the first knock on my door, then another, harder this time. I didn't move. Through the peephole, I saw the shape of my father's shoulders. Derek's temper pacing beside him. Their rhythm matched it's the pounding, steady, entitled, demanding. I wrapped both hands around a cup of tea and stood in the center of my apartment, heart steady. They pounded until my picture frames rattled. I didn't answer. I just listened until the sound faded, replaced by the hum of their SUV pulling away. That's when I understood silence is a mirror. It shows people exactly who they are when they can't use you anymore. When the night finally settled, I looked at the stack of highlighted papers on my table and smiled. Not the happy kind, but the kind that knows something irreversible has begun. 4 days ago, I left their house with nothing. Tonight I had something better, boundaries that couldn't be refunded. 3 days later, the envelope showed up at my door. Plain white, my name scrolled in my father's careful handwriting. Inside, $400 in 20s. No note, just cash, a guilt payment, a hush fee. I stared at it for a long time, then slid it under the table and let it sit there until sunset. When the light turned orange, I picked it up and dropped it in the trash. That small sound, the soft thud of bills hitting plastic, felt cleaner than any apology could. An hour later, my phone buzzed. My father's name lit the screen. I answered on the 4th ring. "Why?" I said before he could speak. He sighed the practiced kind of sigh that meant I'm about to justify something cruel. "The loan payment failed," he said quickly. "It's a mess. Late fees, supplier issues. We just needed a few days' grace. It's not like we used you, Jenny. Don't take it personally." I laughed once. Quiet, sharp. "That's the problem. You never did." He said my name again, softer, like that could fix it. I hung up. After that call, I stopped pretending this was about money. It wasn't. It was about ownership. They built a world where my worth depended on what I gave. Now they were watching it collapse. That night, I opened my banking app. Every emergency transfer, every Venmo, every favor that somehow became a debt. $20,000 over 2 years. I printed every statement until the printer whined in protest. Then I highlighted every transaction tied to Derek. When I was done, the stack glowed yellow, bright enough to see the pattern clearly. The next morning, I packed it all into a manila envelope, wrote on the front, "This is who I've been. Ask yourself who you've been." I dropped it in the post office box and didn't pay for tracking. If it got lost, that meant it had already done its job. By that afternoon, their calls doubled. My mother left voicemails full of tremors that sounded rehearsed. Things got out. Of hand, sweetheart. Come for lunch. We'll talk. Then another at midnight. Family gets through things, Jenny. Derek's under so much pressure. 4 mentions of family in 1 minute, like a spell. On the 5th day, an email came. Subject repayment plan. It was a spreadsheet color-coded. Ridiculous. Derek listed amounts he might start paying back next year. At the bottom, he wrote, "Let's move past this. We're family, right?" I stared at the word family until it blurred. That's when the call came from a number I didn't know. "Miss William," a calm male voice. "Thomas. Read. Greenlight Legal. We're confirming your signature on a $10,000 business loan for Derek William." My pulse stopped. "Excuse me. It appears your signature's on the document," he said. "We're verifying before processing. I never signed anything." A pause. "We've noticed inconsistencies. You won't be held liable. We'll be in touch." When the call ended, I just sat there staring at the wall. My hands trembled, not from fear but from clarity. They hadn't just taken my money. They'd taken my name. I called a lawyer I knew from work, Miss Parson. Her voice was steady, sharp. "This isn't misunderstanding," she said. "It's identity fraud. Stay calm. Document everything." We'll handle it quietly. That word quietly made sense. People like them thrived on chaos. Silence was how you beat them. So, I documented everything. Every voicemail, every forged bill, every payment I'd made in good faith. I labeled the folder paper-cut small wounds that finally bled the truth. The next morning, my lawyer sent the cease and desist letter to Derek's business address. 2 hours later, I got an email from him. "You think you're better than us now? You'll regret this." I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to Grandma's cottage, the only place that ever felt safe. She opened the door before I knocked. "Took you long enough," she said. Her voice didn't need to ask what happened. When I told her everything, the dinner, the forgery, the threats, she didn't flinch. "They'll always take you for granted if you stay on the ground," she said, pouring tea. "Stand up and they'll call you tall like it's an insult." Outside, rain started again. "What should I do?" I asked. She looked at me, eyes steady. "You already did it." 2 weeks later, my father and Derek stood in the middle of the airport, their perfect world unraveling, when a man in a navy suit handed them a thick envelope with my name across it. Summons, official and final. I wasn't there to see it, but Ms. Parson texted me one line that said, "Enough. They've been served." I stared at the message, feeling nothing like victory, nothing like guilt. Just the quiet relief of someone who finally turned the lights on in a dark room. For the first time, I didn't owe anyone a single thing. When the dust finally settled, the silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. The legal mess untangled exactly the way it should have. Derek's fake loan was voided, his business accounts frozen. My father tried to argue, but every lie left a trail of paper with his signature on it. Miss Parson handled it all with surgical calm. She didn't gloat, and neither did I. Justice doesn't need applause. It just needs to work. I didn't check on them after that. I didn't have to. News traveled through whispers. Derek's business collapsed. My father's credit ruined my mother, avoiding neighbors who finally stopped believing her misunderstood family stories. One night, my mother called. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me, the part that still remembered her hands braiding my hair, made me answer. Her voice was softer this time, stripped of performance. "I'm sorry, Jenny," she said, voice breaking. "For all of it, for not protecting you, for letting them use you." I didn't cry, I just listened. When she asked if I'd come to the reunion, I said, "No, Mom. I can forgive you from here." She didn't argue, just whispered, "I love you," and hung up. That night, I sat on my balcony wrapped in a blanket that smelled like rain. The city lights flickered below, steady and uncaring. I looked at the envelope of receipts on my table, the proof of everything, and slipped it into a drawer. Some truths don't need to be revisited. They just need to exist. I made tea, turned off my phone, and breathed. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel like something I had to buy. It felt like something I'd built with silence boundaries and the courage to stop bleeding for people who never noticed the wound. I used to think peace meant everyone getting along. Now I know it means walking away and still wishing them well. My family's reunion went on without me, their table perfectly set, except for one empty chair in the middle. That space said everything I never had to. If you've ever had to choose yourself over a family that kept taking, share your story in the comments. Your voice might give someone else the strength to finally walk away.